Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez are dating again, which naturally brings back memories of the first time they did it almost 20 years ago. The two of them hooked up while filming a movie called Gigli, and the media for some reason decided to act like they had never seen attractive people date each other before, and subsequently wouldn't shut the fuck up about them, treating their movements as breaking news every time they were in the vicinity of a camera lens. Ooh, look, two people are watching a baseball game together. Isn't that so interesting? Aren't you fascinated by this? Not surprisingly, by the time Gigli actually released, a hype backlash had formed and the movie bombed hard at the box office, with one of the worst opening weekends for a movie and wide release of all time up to that point. Gigli also suffered from bad word of mouth, with some immediately saying it might be the worst movie of all time, leading to the biggest second weekend box office drop in history, a record it still holds for movies opening in more than 2,000 theaters. It was a major setback in the careers of both Affleck and Lopez, and although they both eventually recovered, it still remains a blemish on their record. But now that we're almost 20 years removed from the silly media circus around their relationship and the backlash that ensued, we can separate Gigli to its own thing and view it with fresh eyes and ask the question, was it really that bad? Spoiler alert, yes, but let's take the scenic route there. We open with our main character, a guy named Larry Gigli, threatening to brutalize someone who owes money to the mob. He gets interrupted by a random passerby, who he chases away by yelling at him. The scene has no bearing on the movie's plot, but the reason a movie would open with something like this is to convey certain information to the viewer. In this case, we're being told that Gigli is muscle for the mob, and he's able to intimidate ordinary people. This is reinforced right afterwards when Gigli talks to the man who hired him, who comments,
"You're supposed to be like this vicious fucking mad dog."
So apparently his reputation precedes him. Problem is, none of that is true, according to the rest of the movie. Everyone who talks to Gigli after this treats him like an idiot.
I heard you were a bit of a fuck-up. But I gotta tell you, I'm frankly amazed at how much of a fuck-up you actually are.
All right, this thing is monumental, okay? Certainly too big for a jerk-off like yourself.
Fuck is your problem, bitch?
Yeah, that's right. Why don't you come over here so we can kick your ass?
Mind your own fucking business.
Shut the fuck up.
Blow me.
Hurry up, jackass.
You don't know nothing. I can tell just by looking at you.
You piece of shit!
You fucking dummy.
It seems likely that the intent was to create a comedic juxtaposition from this opening scene to who Gigli actually is, but it fails. A comedic juxtaposition only works if it's something that carries through the rest of the film. For example, you might have this badass cop who adults find intimidating, but you put him in front of a bunch of bratty kindergartners who are not impressed. This is funny because the juxtaposition lasts for more than one scene. John Kimball doesn't suddenly become an incompetent buffoon, he remains a competent detective throughout the movie. Since this is the only time that anyone takes Gigli seriously, this doesn't create a juxtaposition, but rather an incongruence. An incongruence is annoying and frustrating to the audience because it causes the movie to make less sense, which makes it more difficult to be invested. Or maybe Gigli was trying to do a subversion, but it fails for pretty much the same reason. We didn't jump to an erroneous conclusion as an audience, we were presented with false information. I know it may seem like I'm spending a lot of time on just the opening scene, but a lot of the film's problems begin here, as incongruent would be the word of the day. Gigli's tone, pacing, and characterization are all over the place from the beginning, and the movie would arguably be better with this part cut out completely. And yet, paradoxically, things only get worse from here. The actual plot begins when Gigli is hired by a mafia middleman named Lewis, and given the task of kidnapping Brian, who is the brother of an attorney, in the hopes of extorting the attorney into dropping charges against Lewis's mob boss. But Gigli is told that there's something special about the man he's kidnapping.
I don't give anybody my seeds. Because Barry, he always asks why I don't give anybody any.
That's right, folks. This is that kind of movie. The one with the type of performance that Simple Jack was parodying.
But this head movie makes my eyes rain.
They make my penis sneeze. When my penis sneezes, they say, God bless you. God bless you, penis.
Most of the movie's attempts at comedy are through this character saying supposedly stupid stuff so we can feel superior to him. Although, quite frankly, they don't even do a good job of that. The big running joke is that he refers to Baywatch as the Baywatch.
The Baywatch.
Yeah, the Baywatch.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The Baywatch, yeah.
Considering I still know boomers who refer to every video game system as the Nintendo, this isn't any kind of noteworthy mistake, and it certainly isn't enough to convince me to point and laugh at someone with a disability. I'm not a politically correct person at all, and I absolutely believe that every subject can be mined for laughs, but there is always a right way and a wrong way to go about this. And in order to better illustrate this point, I'm going to do something that I never thought I would ever have to do in my life. I'm going to use the Farrelly brothers as an example of a thoughtful and nuanced approach to humor. God damn it.
My real passion is my hobby.
Really? What's that?
I work with retards.
There's Something About Mary is a comedy from 1998 that deliberately dances on the line between what is funny and what is just bad taste. Pretty much every joke in the film is on or somewhere near this line. And it is in this context that the story happens to involve a character who is mentally challenged. What's important is that they do a tremendous job of not only incorporating the character into the story, but also the humor. Everybody in this movie takes turn being the butt of the joke, and in this regard, he is treated no different. Yes, some jokes are at his expense, but while other characters might act cruel towards him, the movie itself never does. He is given the same dignity or indignity of every other character, and this equal treatment is crucial as to why There's Something About Mary can straddle this line without ever fully crossing it. But if There's Something About Mary is on this line, Gigli would be all the way over here. More importantly, the Farrelly brothers were always aware that this line existed, whereas Gigli is blissfully ignorant. As a result, the jokes are tone-deaf at best and mean-spirited at worst.
You want to go now?
To the Baywatch.
Let's go. Come on, let's go.
What the fuck is with this music? Gigli is here to kidnap this man, and we're also only 5 minutes away from this.
Why don't you do me a favor and just act fucking normal for a minute?
You're telling
Not
me-
fucking
we're telling
crazy. Normal. How about if I smack you in the fucking head?
Just what emotion do you think you've earned to justify this sappy score? Oh hey, let's rip off Rain Man real quick.
Come on.
Gigli takes Brian home, and almost immediately J-Lo is sent by Lewis to babysit him. And wouldn't you know it, they don't get along.
Don't tell me what we're supposed to do.
I'll kill you.
You don't tell me what to do.
I'll kill you.
Oh dear, she's stuck in an infinite loop, and he's an idiot.
And oh no, she's a lesbian too. That means our attractive leads can't fall in love. I'm sure this won't go anywhere predictable. Shortly after, we are visited by the first of two big cameos.
What?
Your door's not thick enough to pretend you're not home when you're home.
Christopher Walken portrays Jay Moore's impression of Christopher Walken.
Go down to Marie Callender's. Get me a big bowl. Pie, some ice cream on it. Good.
Skittles are inexpensive. They're good for you.
Put some on your head. Your tongue would slap your brains out trying to get to it.
But you can't have them unless you buy.
Interested? Sure.
Grape.
His performance is bizarre. He only appears in this one scene and has no real impact on the story. After he fucks off, our heroes go into town so that Gigli can get bullied by 30-year-old high schoolers, forcing J-Lo to step in to defend him. She tries to be intimidating by talking about Chinese martial arts and telling the kids to stay in school.
So, I want you guys to study hard and keep your grades up, all right?
Sorry to break it to you, but if these guys are still concerned about their grades at this age, their prospects probably are not very high. This scene is incredibly lame, but if you want to know what they were going for, here's a clip from Tommy Boy.
Did you eat the skipper?
You better pray to the god of skinny punks that this wind doesn't pick up!
Free Willy!
Listen up, you little spazoids! I know where you live and I've seen where you sleep. I swear to everything holy that your mothers will cry when they see what I've done to you!
You might have noticed by now that I keep referencing other films, and the reason is that Gigli doesn't have too many original ideas. Pretty much everything it wants to do has already been done by other movies, and better. This has a side effect of making it clear both what it's trying to do and why it's failing, which makes the experience of watching it that much more frustrating. And then the characters go to meet Gigli's mom. The significance of this part is, by the way, I wasn't joking, those guys aren't meant to be high schoolers. The significance of this part is to have this exchange between J-Lo and Mrs. Gigli.
Eh? Guess what?
What?
She's a lesbian.
Never mind. She's been with fellas before, am I right, darling? Huh?
You're right.
But sometimes they have their limitations, am I right?
Yeah.
That's right, men. If a beautiful woman says she's a lesbian, that doesn't mean she was naturally attracted to women. She's only in the carpet business because the sausage factory was staffed with inferior men. But a real stud like you can step in and set her straight. I'm not sure what's stranger, seeing a generic hetero fantasy being played without much nuance in a mainstream film, or that Ben Affleck at this point in his career was apparently trying to get typecast as the guy who converts lesbians. I suppose now is a good time to bring up the fact that this movie underwent major rewrites after filming began because producers thought they could cash in on the tabloid shit around Affleck and Lopez. And it shows. Not only is the romantic subplot, which didn't exist in the original script, handled with the subtlety of a YouTube reaction video, but there are several scenes of characters monologuing that were clearly written on the fly and not put through a badly needed redraft. The first was that nonsense with Lopez trying to be a badass after school special, and the second is this spiel where she brags about how everyone wants to put their tongue in her vagina.
One's first impulse is to kiss. What? To kiss the lips. Because the mouth is the twin sister, the almost exact look-alike of the what? The mouth is the twin sister of the vagina.
I'm not a cultured person myself. In fact, I avoid learning anything about the world that exists beyond the 715 area code. But even I can instantly call bullshit on this. There are and have been many cultures which do not express affection with mouth-to-mouth kissing. In fact, that's a big part of the reason why we have such phrases as French kissing and Eskimo kisses. Furthermore, is this movie really trying to tell us that we all talk out of our vaginas? And what about gay men and straight women? Do they too have an innate desire to go down on J-Lo? But Gigli's an idiot, so he thinks this is profound and does his own monologue where he whines about how much he wants to fuck her.
And I'm fucking sad. Because I got this fucking beautiful, sexy, gorgeous, heartthrob-orama, fucking smart, amazing, bombshell, 17 on a fucking 10 scale girl sleeping in a bed right next to me. A fucking untouchable, unhavable, unattainable brick wall fucking Dicosaurus rexi.
What makes this even worse is the music gets sappy again, and J-Lo acts like this is somehow romantic, and is considering this douche as a life partner. Mommy, how did you and Daddy fall in love? Oh, sweetie, I knew he was the one from the moment he called me a Dicosaurus Rex. That same night, J-Lo decides he's earned some coochie, and seduces him with this line.
It's turkey time. Gobble, gobble.
What the? That's terrible.
No, I'm not going to rewind that, because you know you heard it correctly. Thousands of years of storytelling to build upon, and that was the best that someone could do. I have to say, though, the weirdest failing of this movie is the fact that there's no chemistry between the two leads, even though they start bonking in real life while filming this. While it's true that the material is bad, their performances don't do anything to elevate it either. Lopez often looks like she's trying not to laugh at how stupid her dialogue is, and other times she overly enunciates her words.
One has to use their professional prerogative to override a dumb request.
Affleck just kind of oscillates between mumbling and mugging and never seems to grab hold of an actual character. After so much nothing has happened, we're thankfully getting close to the climax, which brings us to the other big celebrity cameo.
Hello.
Al Pacino plays the mob boss, who's the target of Brian's U.S. attorney brother. Pacino and Walken both get a lot of crap for their scenery chewing in this film, and deservedly so, but in Pacino's defense, he at least acts like he's talking to people on the same planet as him. He shoots Lewis in the head because, as it turns out, the whole kidnapping and extortion plan was never authorized.
I don't give a shit. I don't.
That was Pacino giving his honest opinion of his performance in this movie, and they just left it in. Then he starts rambling, so J-Lo steps in to try to talk him out of killing the two of them, while Gigli, our title character, just sits there and does fucking nothing, like he does for the rest of this whole goddamn movie. Seriously, he just sits there like a useless lump of shit while his girlfriend does all the talking. At one point, he even looks annoyed that she's trying to save their lives. Like, oh, I'm sorry, is this bothering you? It's amusing to think that this anticipated the sad Affleck meme by a decade. Oh, darkness, my old friend. But it's more aggravating that we've spent so much time on such a boring and meaningless main character. This is possibly the biggest reason why it's so easy to hate this movie. Look, you can have a main character who is abrasive. You can have a main character who is morally questionable. Hell, two of my favorite films of all time feature characters that I would call completely and wholly irredeemable. But they have to be interesting. They have to be compelling. They drive the stories they're in with their personalities and their actions. Gigli, on the other hand, hasn't done a fucking thing in the movie that's named after him. Seriously, fucking do something! What's amazing is that he was apparently supposed to die at the end, but test audiences hated it, which makes sense because it would have only further hammered home just how much time he wasted following this guy. But J-Lo does talk her way out of their predicament, and Pacino lets them leave scot-free. And we are now past the 90-minute mark, and the plot is done. There's nothing left to do but let the romantic leads drive off into the sunset and end the pain. Incredibly, there's still over 20 minutes left before they finally drive off into the sunset. Holy shit! Who thought it was a good idea to have 2 hours of this thing unleashed upon an unsuspecting public? I have to assume that the editor was a misanthrope who wanted to increase mankind's collective suffering. What helps drag it out is that they inexplicably try to have an emotional payoff to the Baywatch running joke. Fun fact, when I first watched this movie, I was in an IM conversation with famous cracked writer Maxwell Yezpidalik. Naturally, I was griping within the first few minutes about how bad it was, and he responded, "Just wait until you get to the musical number at the end." I laughed, believing it was a little joke on his part, because there's no way a supposed crime comedy would end with a musical number, right? And yet, sure enough, the damn thing almost launches into a musical number. When I told Maxwell that I couldn't believe he had been telling me the truth, he admitted that he had never actually seen Gigli, and was simply saying what he thought would be the dumbest way possible for a movie like this to end, and it turned out to be damn close to the truth. And that, to me, summarizes this whole thing perfectly. Gigli plays down to your absolute worst expectations of what a film might be. The worst comedy, the worst musical tone, worst acting, worst writing, worst everything. Fuck this movie. I've noticed that it hasn't been showing up on all-time worst film lists as often recently. We need to change that. Gigli doesn't deserve the mercy of slowly being forgotten. It should be mounted on a pike as a warning to future generations. Don't do this. It absolutely is as bad as you've heard, and not in a fun way. Oh yeah, and there's even some extra content during the closing credits because God knows there would be so many people sitting in the theaters hoping this film gives them more.
Now, stick out. Even white boys got to shout. Baby got back. We go, we go, we go, we go, we go, we go. Baby got back. We go, we go, we go.
And I just lost the last bit of patience that I had. Time to make Gigli the first sacrifice at the altar of Kaz.